Hello and welcome to the Hub on CGTN. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. As the new state leadership lineup has been announced, how prepared is China to face socioeconomic challenges and geopolitical headwinds? How will the country's sweeping administrative revamp close remaining loopholes? What will be the key growth drivers going forward? But first, how do foreign entrepreneurs look at the two sessions? To discuss this, we're joined by Simon Lichtenberg, CEO of furniture firm Trayton Group. Simon, welcome to the Hub on CGTN. Great to have you. You're Danish, but you have been living in China for what, 30 years now? How's China treating you?
Great, absolutely great. Yes, 31 years. I came in to study Chinese language in 1987. I'm in Shanghai, I live in Shanghai, Fudan University. You're asking, how is China treating me? China is treating me great. Of course, the challenges around the COVID lockdowns has been very difficult, but we are very happy to be here for so many years. Yeah, me and my family.
Great. Actually, your China connection goes way back, right? In the early 20th century, in 1906, if I remember correctly, your grandparents' generation started an engineering company that brought Western technology to China. Tell us a bit about that story.
Yeah, so it's not my grandparents, it's my great-great-grandmother's cousin. His name was Wilhelm Meyer, and he came to China together with a great Nordic cable company that made the first connection between China and the US. And he left and started his own company called Meyer and Anderson and Co. Shencang Yanghang. And that was in Shanghai in 1905. And he was, in fact, he was a Danish entrepreneur, just like me, but he just came to China about 100 years earlier than me. He was the first importer. At that time, it was bulbs, electrical bulbs that was imported to China.
Wow, that was
you can say the beginning. Yes, yeah, they're quite significant. And in fact, on one of his first trip to New York to meet the General Electric general manager, he asked if he could buy electrical bulbs for China. And the general manager said, yeah, you can do that. But if you can also help me to sell trains and power stations, that would be great. So he became the agent for General Electric for China and started the General Electric business in China at that time.
Okay, fast forward to current days, and as an entrepreneur who has witnessed China's growth and development and the past 3 years, which has been complex and complicated, what do you make of the current business environment in China? How would you say the business environment is like for entrepreneurs like you?
Yes. So first of all, I want to say that the Chinese development, the economic development over the last 30 years has been enormous and really, really impressive. And China has moved maybe 600 million people out of poverty and has expanded an economy and become not a developed maybe economy yet, but certainly getting close. And I have been part of that whole history, and that has been a very important, of course, part of my life, but also a big opportunity for me. In the last couple of years, there's a lot of challenges because maybe I would say a lot of media, negative media in the West about China and so on and so on. But the business as such, I mean, the manufacturing power, the innovation, the speed and the governance of China is second to none in the world. So there's nowhere where we can make our products better than China. Nowhere.
I mean, as a foreign entrepreneur, as a China expert, how do you look at the two sessions? As I'm sure you watch the two sessions closely and its policy signals, what are the things that you're paying special attention to this year?
Well, I think that both the two sessions, but also the 20th Party Congress has been a very important focus point for me as a business and also for other foreign business owners in China. The 20th Party Congress has emphasized several times that China is only opening further and further up, and foreign investments are very important. And here at the two sessions, there's been a lot of talk about how to support private enterprises, how to support foreign enterprises, how to opening up better, how to level the playing field. There's some markets are maybe difficult for foreign companies to enter, and how can that be helped, and so on and so on. So this is what we've been looking for. At least I have been looking for in the two sessions, and that has certainly come out in a very good way. I would say very positive.
Yes, Simon, we understand that you took part in China's political deliberative process, China's decision-making process, if you will, including being solicited legal advice and opinions on drafting or amending some of China's domestic laws. Can you tell us a bit about that experience?
Yes, so I was invited. That was in fact through my the neighborhood committee of our area. They invited me to participate in different discussions about the local area, and that led into me being invited into so far 4 sessions on the changes or improvement of Chinese law. And that has been the corporate law, the VAT law, the financial stability law, and the charity law. So four big laws in the Chinese system, where I was invited as a foreigner to take part in the process together with the neighborhood committee. Selected people that they thought were relevant for this process, and then we were through meetings. We read the proposals, the legal proposals from the NPC in Beijing, from the central, from the National People's Congress, and we gave our opinions and points, and we did video conferences directly with the NPC members from Beijing.
How serious do you think they are, the governments are, when it comes to soliciting your advice?
I would say they're very serious. For sure, this was very, very sincere, and I must say I was very impressed and also, excited that you invite a foreign businessman to help create the laws in China. I mean, I don't think that the Western countries invite a lot of Chinese businessmen to help their laws.
Yeah, I can't imagine a Chinese entrepreneur sitting on the Capitol Hill these days, other than testifying for alleged crime that they did not commit.
Exactly. So it was really very much a proof of open government, and I am certain that they were sincere. And also some of the opinions we gave, and the reason for me being there was to give the international perspective. So what is the international, the Danish law, the European law on certain things within corporate governance? What are the best experiences? How can they be shared with the National People's Congress, and how do they use that? And it was a very, very positive and also very very productive set of meetings.
Yeah, a new buzzword in China, in China's political dictionary, is whole process people's democracy, which has been dismissed by many Western scholars and media as propaganda. What's your understanding of this word?
Well, I think that first of all, I don't believe that the West has monopoly on the definition of democracy. So in the you can say in the Western sense, they believe that democracy is something very, very specific to a Western political system. China has a Chinese system, and the West has a Western system, and each system works for each party. It's not something that the West can say we know how to do this better. They don't know how to rule China or govern China better than the Chinese. Of course they don't. Just as China is not trying to tell the West how they should rule their country. So in my opinion, this is the Chinese way of getting opinions from a broad base of the population into the legal regulations. And I think it's brilliant. It's very well done. From what I have seen, it has been a very good process, and people have been heard.
Right. Also, there is this often, perception that democracy, like you said, is a monopoly of the West. It is a concept that is exclusively associated with Western countries, and that Western democracy is the only political model that works in the long run. There is no alternative, is this famous motto from Margaret Thatcher, the late Prime Minister of the UK. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is China a gravity-defying case, in your opinion?
No, again, this is, as I just said before, China, the Chinese population and the Chinese government are the ones that must decide how to rule China. And of course, in accordance with international law and international systems and rules and regulations of the United Nations and respect for other countries and so on. But China has the right and the role and the responsibility to rule China. And it is not up to the West to tell China what they should or shouldn't do, or what is democracy or what is not democracy. But it's up to China themselves. This is my personal opinion. It's up to China, of course, to figure that out. And I think that if you look at things like trust in government, then I think the Chinese population has a higher trust in government than many Western countries have. So you tell me which one is the better one. You can't judge it like that.
Simon, recently the Chinese government has issued and introduced a series of new policies aimed at improving the country's foreign business environment or doing business in China environment. As a seasoned entrepreneur in China, someone who has lived in China for 31 years, what is your perspective on these new measures and what would be your proposal in perfecting and improving some of these measures going forward?
Yeah. So first of all, again, as I said before, I'm very happy, and I think that comes for many other foreign entrepreneurs in China. We're very happy that foreign investments and opening up further in China and the support and the protection of private enterprises is a big part of the government's new plans. In terms of what can be done better, then of course there's a lot of issues in the implementation of these. The big direction. So how do you support specifically let's say IP rights? How do you protect IP rights better? How do you make sure that the counterfeits are actually taken care of? How do you support the local government in a province in Zhejiang or Guangdong or wherever? How is that done and implemented better? That, I think there's a lot of work to be done there. A lot of work. Another area I would say is and this is something that also maybe Western media has talked a lot about, is what they call equal access. So this is about market access in China. And personally, we don't have any issues with equal access because in our industry, we're not on any negative list or any state-owned enterprises that are competing with us or anything like that. But there are some industries where a lot of other companies, they feel that they don't have the same access to government contracts or big procurement volumes and so on and so on. So this area, I think, at least more transparency around that, I think will be helpful for sure. And there's also regulatory things around. Let's say Denmark is quite big in pharmaceuticals and biopharma and life sciences approval processes and maybe visibility around how to do that faster and better and things like that. So there's a lot of areas, but this is part of developing the Chinese economy.
Simon, people have been talking about this Chinese modernization, or the Chinese path to modernization. You were not just a witness to it, you actually lived it by living and working in China for the past 31 years. What are your thoughts on this Chinese path to modernization?
I think that China has, as we all know, over the last 40 years, developed the economy in an unbelievable way. And it has, it's maybe never seen in the history of the world that so many people have been lifted out of poverty and such a big population has become part of a much more modern society. I have been part of this myself, and I think that it is a big importance to the world as such, because the Chinese economy has delivered a big part of the global growth.
Simon Lichtenberg, CEO of Trayton Group, thank you so much for coming on the Hub on CGTN. Thank you, and come back again. With a new state leadership lineup and a cabinet institutional reform plan, all eyes are more than ever on China's 2 sessions this year. What do we know about some of the major policy changes to be implemented? What will be the significant new trends in China going forward? For more on this, we're joined by Einar Tengen, current affairs commentator and senior fellow at Taihe Institute, and also by Wang Guan, director of the Center for China and Globalization. Welcome, gentlemen. Let me go to you first, President Wang. President Xi is unanimously elected president of China, along with some other appointments of the State Council, the legislative, as well as judiciary branches. What do you make of China's new leadership lineup?
Well, I think this is very significant. So that gives continuity, gives stability, and gives also further guidance to the country. The continuity that really gave the country the efficiency, the effectiveness, and also to openly emphasize again the open door policy, reform policy. And I think this is really set a good tune, a good rallying, matching order for the next 5 years for the whole country, and to work with the world, all together.
Continuity and stability. Einar, what do you think the new Chinese leadership lineup will mean for China and for the rest of the world?
Well, clearly, Xi Jinping has a group that he's worked with before. This is going to be his team, and we're expecting him to, as they say, winners want the ball. And he certainly wants to take, China in the direction that it's been going. He's been preparing. Right, what you see here is a complete team. They're going forward. If you're looking at this in management terms, if this is a corporation, he has the people he wants there, and we're expecting great things.
Very interesting perspective. President Wang, as this is the first gathering since the 20th National Congress, one of the first major gatherings, I should say, which legislations and proposals during this year's MPC and CPPCC have caught your eyes and your attention? And what's their likely impact on the Chinese society?
And there's a lot of discussion going on. Private sectors are our own people. We should really support them wholeheartedly. We should, solve the problem they have, and also we should give them a platform to let them demonstrate their great capacities. And also this emphasis of private enterprise. I think it's a great stimulant for the economy. That after being hit so hard for the last 3 years of the COVID, and I think this is really that where we need it now, to reinvigorate, to stimulate the private sector's competence and also all the working spirit.
Let's talk about the Chinese economy and economic target around 5% for 2023. We know that last year it was a miss due to COVID and other factors. What do you think of this year's GDP growth target of China that is around 5%? And what are the likely drivers to boost the Chinese economy going forward?
Well, I think that actually I think it's quite conservative, 5%. For example, you remember that in 2020, when we hit so hard by COVID, China posted only positive, but it's only 1 point some percent. But next year, 2021, China get 8%, 7-8 times higher than the previous year. So 2022 was a year really depressed by this COVID, and we had a 3%. We can at least double that in 2023, even probably higher, 7 or 6.5, 7%, because the optimism comes from now the January, February, the purchasing index of Trayton has greatly gone up significantly. But also, we see last year we had a record number of trade as well, and also now we have all the tourism coming back, and flights increase, visa relax. So all those things, and plus the consumption, which is the government is really stimulating, and also depressed the spending for the last 3 years, going to be unleashed again this year. So I'm quite optimistic that this is going to be really the target is going to be reached.
Einar, do you share that optimism? How do you see China's GDP target of 5% becoming a reality?
Well, I think there are three things to consider. First off, Xi Jinping was sending a very strong message that he has a balanced societal plan, that he's not going to just say, let's try to juice the economic numbers to make things look nice. Second, he's given his team room to overperform. And very important, new team. They want to strike the right chord. So next year at this time, we'll be looking at their performance, and I think I would agree with Henry that they will overperform in terms of bringing in better numbers. And the last part is, the last thing the world needs right now is inflation. If he had announced that he was looking for 6%, you would have seen commodity markets just explode. This is the exact opposite of what you need, and it shows a tremendous amount of restraint on his side. To make sure that it's not only good for China, but also good for the rest of the world.
Einar, in this year's government institutional reform and overhaul of government ministries, which ones would you consider as the more significant?
Well, I think all three are significant, and the way I look at them is China sees government and the needs of its people as dynamic. That's a real contrast to what you see happening in the U.S. with the Fed insisting that a 2% inflation is worth killing the economy over. China takes a much more flexible, pragmatic approach. They have goals, and they make sure that the mechanisms that they have to deal with those goals are in place. So you see them moving into data, into finance, and also into technology, all areas where there are significant headwinds. Obviously, finance is an internal one. Data is both internal and external. And then, obviously, trade and technology is something that is very contentious at this point. So China's doing what is necessary to deliver what they promised. This is what the work plan is. It is a blueprint for what's going to happen over the next 5 years and over this next year. There's going to start fleshing out the details as this new team gets in. And as I said, let's see what they are able to do, especially given very difficult times.
Yeah, one thing that really struck me was the emphasis, or shall I say re-emphasis, on technology, on basic research, on science. For example, one of the highlights of this round of institutional reform would be the shake-up at the Ministry of Science and Technology. And Henry, what do you make of their overhaul of the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology, and how do you think that will translate into policies that will enhance China's science and scientific research capabilities?
I think this is very important. I mean, science and technology are really the trend of the future, and also the most competitive area that China could add on, because China is already the largest manufacturing country in the world. China is really from made in China to created in China, innovated in China, and that's need a lot of policy coordination, a lot of government intervention, and of course also stimulation as well. And also, given that China already have 3,000 universities, has many enterprises, and also there's a provincial municipality competition, hundreds of industry parks, science and technology parks, industrial parks. There's a variety of things, and also China has to really emphasize, prioritize. There's a clean technology. China is leading in the solar, in wind and the clean vehicle technology. So I think there's a government should put more priorities to those more beneficial to the people's lives, to the development of the country. And then the science technology is also the great productivity. We're getting to the age of AI, robotics. We're getting into GPT and all those areas.
Yeah.
I mean, government has to respond to that. The regulator has to come up. And so I think this strengthening of the Ministry of Science and Technology is very important. And also they have to do more international cooperation. Science and technology has to be international cooperated. We have actually people from Ministry of Science and Technology visit us today. We actually, there's more international needs to be stressed. World scientific research programs, science foundations and scientific and technology exchanges, all those good features for benefit of mankind.
Einar, Beijing has been talking about the fact that it wants to be a innovation hub. It wants Made in China to be transformed into Dreamed Up in China. But still, ChatGPT is still created by the United States. What do you think are some of the main sticking points in China regarding technological development and innovation?
Well, first off, ChatGPT is not new. This was something that was conceived, and I was looking at it in terms of Nature magazine and Scientific American 30 years ago. So this has always been conceptually there. It's been released. It's a product that still has some flaws. I mean, the problem with this AI is, it still has to be designed. There's still algorithms, and those algorithms have assumptions. And also, as Henry pointed out, it's based on a large body of information. The question is that information accurate? And is your algorithm able to differentiate between good and bad information? And we've seen that countless times. All of these chat AIs have failed in terms of being able to differentiate, whether it's a relationship or political matters. They're not able to give consistent answers based on what people would consider a moralistic basis. So China is definitely looking at this. A lot of the models, they're not as complex as people think, but it really has to do with, the speed of, 5G, 6G, the ability to gather large amounts of information and then use these algorithms to create things. But it's not magic. And the question is, how can it be effectively monetized and things like this? So China is not lagging in innovation. I think that would be wrong. A study commissioned by the US State Department that was done by an Australian study group put China ahead in 37 out of 44 strategic areas. So this idea that China steals technology and that China is lagging behind and just copying the West is utter nonsense. And that's the study of the United States itself.
Yeah, indeed. We see a lot of Chinese innovation going abroad and bringing, and affecting change. For example, in Brazil, we have this ultra high voltage transmission system that is bringing electricity from northern Amazon to southern Brazil, where 1/10 of the Brazilian population's electricity usage were dependent upon. There are many examples, in that regard around the world. Henry, besides a new national data bureau is set to be set up for advancing the development of data-related fundamental institutions and research, what is the significance of that?
Well, this is very, very significant. I think, we're talking about China was making a lot of progress. I mean, you talk about technology innovation, but China has now the largest patent applicants in the world now, files more patents than any other country in the world. That's really something remarkable. So I think we expect this 21st century petroleum of data flow within China, but also probably flow in the world. That is really beneficial, the golden mile of 21st century. It's high time now China set up this data administration department so that they can have a proper strategy, how to harness the benefit of data, how can we make this petroleum in the 21st century petroleum that really the largest rich mine we can really harness that, produce that, and let them circulate and let the benefit the world. So I think this is really great. And also China is considering joint CPTPP, and data flow is one of the big concern there. So I think by strengthening this department, so we have a better policy coordination, better discussion, and better interaction with the relevant department, other counterparts in the world. So I think this is really a great move and a great achievement of these two sections. China is really paying a lot of importance to this data importance and data flow and data management.
Yeah, regarding financial reform, a national financial regulatory administration will be set up to replace the current China Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission. Einar, what do you think is the rationale behind this move?
So right now, China is facing a lot of issues, especially with small, medium-sized business entities. They have debt issues at the local level. And what they need to do is to centralize this and to make sure that the policies, as I said, are harmonized. What you don't want is different departments going in different directions or sending out mixed signals. And this is the way that they anticipate they'll be able to do this. A lot more regulation in terms of how money is being sent around, financed, and that's going to be very, very important. I mean, everything that we're talking about, all three of these initiatives really aim towards one thing. Two things. One, making China the low-cost producer. And you can do that with all of these tools by making sure that the financing there, that the data infrastructure is created, and that you have policies to guard both the public and the government in terms of making sure that these things are, in fact, producing value as you go forward. So this is all part of one policy, not three separate entities or ideas. This is not like Washington, D.C., where people come up with ideas and they just float them around and they're not harmonized with the other aspects or strategies that they want to push.
Einar and Harry, thank you so much for being part of this discussion and sharing your thoughts on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that would do it for this edition of The Hub on CGTN. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Our news coverage continues. Bye and take care.